All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of the Council of St. Michael. The council has convened on this Wednesday, November 12th, in the year of our Lord 2025. And we have a fantastic topic for you tonight. Back more onto we're going to be back onto the Catholic centered stuff. We went a little more current events. We're going to talk about some current event stuff this week because there's always some things we can glean out of what's happening in the news and what's going on here as well. But we really want to focus tonight's episode on the monastic path to self-sufficiency in a crisis. Now, when I say a crisis, everybody's going to go to the 10th, 11th worst case scenario, but a crisis could be anything from a food shortage to what we talked about with the snap apocalypse or any of these other things. So I think we need to redefine our idea of what a crisis is, because crises happen and they happen often, and because we only think of crisis as a worst case scenario, we tend to put ourselves in a worse position. But we're going to get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, here tonight. As always, with me, the council has assembled. Angel from the Catholic Preppers Unite, how are you this evening, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to the show, and I know there's a lot going on in the world, so this is going to be some good context to help, help some folks think about what they should be doing and where we're heading.
Excellent, excellent. Joey, fresh off his retreat this weekend at the F-150 Ranch, or the pickup truck ranch. I don't know what it is. I'm a Texan too, so I get the pickup truck thing, but stereotypes exist for a reason, Joey, and I guess that was affirmation of such one.
Yeah, if there was ever an affirmation of what it is to be like in Texas, to live in Texas, there you go. That retreat was nothing, and there was actually more pickup trucks than that. Just some guys that left the ranch for a little bit, so there was maybe four trucks that weren't in that video that I posted on my X. So yeah, it was a great time to recharge the batteries. My family's been through a lot here lately, and we have a special needs son, for those who don't know, and he's been experiencing seizures and just a plethora of medical issues. So it was good to kind of get away from the weekend and kind of have some time to spend, by myself, kind of contemplating good subject for tonight, and just kind of recharge the batteries a little bit and kind of come up with an internal game plan for how we're going to go attack this next phase of our life. So thanks to Taylor Marshall for having me out again for this for our semi-annual retreat. That was great.
Sponsored by Ford. But well, there were some Dodges there. I'm sorry.
I drive a GMC Sierra, so I mean there was a little bit of everything there.
It was impressive as a guy who doesn't have a pickup truck, so I guess I couldn't have been invited. It's always impressive to see the amount of trucks that Texans we just love them. It's like the state unofficial state motto, or the
Cowboy Cadillac.
It really is, especially the way some of them are just, how pricey they are. Anyway, different topic for a different day. Trad Revival Operator, my friend, how are you? Happy 250th birthday to the Marines. How are you tonight?
I am doing good. Yeah, happy birthday to the Marine Corps. Our birthday was 2 days ago, November 10th, 250 years. I'm not too hungover. I drank all I needed to drink, smoked all the cigars I needed to smoke, and celebrated, got it out of my system. But now we're back. Excited for this topic, Rick. I'm hoping we can glean a lot of information, give some good info to our audience here, about self-sufficiency, monasticism, how we can blend the two, and hopefully, put some new ideas out there for people to learn from.
Absolutely. Excellent, gentlemen. It is going to be a good night. As always, if you like what we're doing, folks, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. Helps us reach many more people, helps the show grow. We started a new channel just because we wanted to make sure we could actually reach more people. And if you guys help us with that by liking and hitting the buttons, all the buttons and the fun things, it will help us do that as well. So before we get to our first topic of the night, we do have a couple things that we are going to cover, at least in the current event realm. Our first topic will be from sunny Los Angeles. And once again, even in Los Angeles, even in a gun state like California, a place that has rosters, and we might even get to the fact that the Glock, the new V's have dropped and everybody's taking a look at them. Real quick, nothing's really changed, but that's a different story for a different day. But even in Los Angeles, in the bluest state in the union, you still have the right, and you still should be able to use your right, your God-given right to self-defense especially when you have somebody who is all natural, you know, approaching you. I guess the gentleman was living the phrase, you know, fight like you train and train like you fight. But outside of that, a 79-year-old Vietnam War veteran intervened after seeing a man all natural allegedly entering a Los Angeles residence Friday. NBCLA reported that the Vietnam veteran saw this man and decided to intervene. A couple things that I'll say about this. One, the fact that cities are falling apart. We're seeing this, especially in bluer cities. I know Mondani has talked about replacing his police officers with counselors and all these other kind of fantasy things that the left talks about. But at the same time, I actually give props to this Vietnam veteran because I actually wouldn't recommend it. I know we've talked about intervening in the past, so I would have been like, well, he's a different breed. He's 79 years old. He's not going to listen to a young buck like me when I'm saying, oh, don't worry about the legal, consequences and all these other kinds of things. He's like, nah, I'm gonna do this. And so very much respect to him. And it's very interesting to see. The last point I'll make, and then I'll go down the line to Trad, Joey, and Angel here. The less law enforcement that will exist in these places, the more you are going to have to rely on your neighbors. And I'm just throwing this out of nowhere. The guys don't know this because that's kind of how I think. You may see the rise in cities of unofficial neighborhood, not like your neighborhood watch, like somebody's looking at a phone. Like a real neighborhood watch may actually have to come into effect based on how rapidly cities are declining. Trad, thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, this story was kind of shocking to me. Reason number 10,507 why I will not go to LA. Short and sweet of it right there, right? I mean, props to this veteran, Vietnam veteran who defended himself, right? Legally. I mean, he had the right of self-defense. Your right to self-defense doesn't go away when you cross certain state borders. Some people like to think it does, but your natural right to self-defense doesn't go away. You have a right to protect yourself and your property. LA is in a city, in a state that is extremely blue. And in this situation with a guy in his birthday suit, so to speak, approaching this elderly gentleman, making threats. I think in the article I was reading through it, Rick, before the show, I think the veterans, both of his legs were broken in the attack. Like he was, I would say, very much justified in using the force that he did to protect himself, considering his age, considering the level of violence that we saw. But again, these types of places, these cities, these locales where they're very harsh, more so oftentimes on the victims than they are the perpetrators. It's a tough situation to be in. But yeah, props to the veteran for protecting himself, doing what he needed to do to protect himself and his community. But it's a sad state of affairs that someone like a veteran, a Vietnam veteran, the day after Veterans Day, which was yesterday, has to deal with this level of violence, deal with these crazy individuals that roam the streets. So yeah, it's thank God he's all right, but yeah, we'll have to see how this plays out in the further along.
Joey.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to this veteran. I mean, for anybody who didn't read the story, this veteran ended up with 2 broken legs in this incident and was still 100% combat effective. I mean, hats off. It just goes to show the toughness of veterans out there, no matter what branch of service. I mean, we just have a level of toughness and don't quit. And unfortunately, we are going to have to see how this deal is going to play out in the end. But I mean, really kudos. I mean, and Rick, you're right about to your point about having a localized neighborhood watch. And I know this because I've have some sources, but I know in some of the upper echelon areas here in Dallas, they have actually taken training. There's a thing called CERT training you can get, and they have actually trained for like civil unrest. And in the event of civil unrest, they are going to have their own police force to defend these these neighborhoods, like these houses in these neighborhoods are like a block. Like they take up an entire block on their own for one house, and they are going to have the ability to protect their livelihoods. And so I think you are right. We will see a rise in these sorts of privatized or just just organized groups that get together and they're roaming their neighborhood, making sure everything is safe. And, that's what we're being pushed into. We're kind of being pushed into a corner, and you push us into a corner, we're going to figure it out. Just like we said, you can make all the adjustments you want to a Glock. We're going to figure it out. Same thing with us. You're going to take away our police force. You're going to take away our ability to defend ourselves. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah, it's very interesting in that regard that, essentially, we have precedent for this. The mob used to do so back in, the 20s and 30s. There were sections of places you couldn't go. Chinatown in different, states. They used to be more enforcement on certain ghettos. Now, I'm not talking about the modern day interpretation of a ghetto. Ghetto actually just means a sectioned off area where people of the same nationality are located. Italian ghetto, Irish ghetto, whatever the case may be. And it used to be more enforced by local rules. And we also have precedent that there are certain cities and towns that have a high Muslim population. They have their own police. They have their own essentially no-go zones and things like that. So, Angel, it's very interesting that communities have had this in the past, and it seems like that's going to have to be the thing that resorts to, because even government, even at the local level, it seems to be ineffective or doesn't want to be effective at protecting its own citizens.
Yeah, Rick, you have cities that have a poorly funded, poorly, they have just poor laws and oversight when it comes to law enforcement. It's unfortunate that we have to deal with these things in our society. But I mean, when you talk about they start reallocating funds and reducing the numbers and reforming police forces, in which they'll replace them with consulars and you see the jails and prisons, they're not as full as before. It's people are out there doing this stuff, and um, it's going to come a time where we're just going to have to form a network like we talked about and stay within the confines of the law, but defend ourselves. And I think that time has already happened. We've seen what's happened all over. And in all these cities that have been defunded and have suffered, Portland, Los Angeles, New York, that's just to name a few, but it's there's areas that you don't drive at night, in some of these neighborhoods because of the predatory street crimes that happen. If you stand out, you will be preyed on, and they will, and it's just sad to have these places that are like war zones in our country. And I know we're trying to go a different direction right now and change that, but it's going to be a difficult go. But again, like you all have said, kudos to the 79-year-old veteran that put his life on the line to to defend himself and stop someone that was crazy, from inflicting further harm.
Yeah, it's interesting that we are going to be seeing some kind of response. Right? People, there's always some kind of response, enough from people eventually when they get pushed far enough, and eventually when government is incapable or is demonstrating that is incapable of doing the basic jobs, which is ensuring public safety. Now, of course, if you listen to me at any length of time, I'll tell you Winnebago versus DeShaney says that the public, police don't actually have to do so, but there's that conflict of interest between the two. But we see that people are still willing to do these kinds of things, and that's great. I think it's very good that this veteran, has a sense of honor, and it really is that old school mentality that kind of almost, I guess that this guy's not even a boomer. I think he's like a super boomer. Like he's not, I don't think he's actually what you consider a boomer. But he's definitely a cut of a different person. And I'm going to make this point, and anybody can jump in on this. It's going to be a little bit of a grenade, but with the influx of H-1Bs, and I don't know if you guys saw the clip from Trump from a disastrous interview last night when he said, like, no, everybody in America's stupid, even though you voted for me. You're all dumb, and I got to bring in all these other people. The more of these people that you bring in, regardless, this isn't a xenophobic concept. the people that are being brought in do not have the pedigree of these 79-year-old Vietnam veterans, right? The or Trad or Joey or Angel, the men that have actually signed up and taken the oath and defended the union and take that step. So we're also going to see that eventually break down, because I think a lot of us have comfort in the fact that, hey, man, we're the nation of 1776. We're the nation of the Civil War. We always rally together and we always get the job done, in World War II and all these other kinds of things. But I have a fear, gentlemen, that with the mass importation of people who don't share that history, not that they're bad people, but they don't share that history, that American spirit, for lack of a better term, will be lost. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I wanted to jump in here first because I am a direct victim from, not a victim, but I am a direct, I had a direct cause and effect from these H-1 visas in my prior career. I worked, in a corporate America tech job.
Mhm.
And they were people from certain countries coming in, replacing our work. And one day I found myself having little to no work among other guys that have been in the company 10 years. And it was sad to see that culture shift, that they were okay with filtering us out and having them take over because they can pay them less. And I don't know what you want to call that. I'm not going to get into details. I don't want to get the channel flagged, but the reality is, I saw it. I saw that they just kept coming in and kept getting hired by this company, and they would work 3 months and work and leave and come back. And I saw where it was going till eventually they were being hired as full timers. But these people were working through all these holidays where we hold dear. Like you talked about Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Christmas. And I found myself seeing this culture where they want us to adhere to what they're bringing to the table. Because I was getting calls during the holidays to work, and I'm like, it's the only time I have off to spend with my family. I understand you don't believe in what we believe, but let's be reciprocal and respectful. So the friction started, and it's a modern day influx of a societal change that we're experiencing, and it hasn't stopped. Just because Trump is in office doesn't mean that immigration has stopped. It's only criminal, illegal immigration that has stopped. So let's get that straight. Let's get that in order. There's people from all countries in the world that are still applying for citizenship and visas, and they're granting them those. So everyone wants to come to the United States. We have best healthcare, best, careers, companies. People come here to thrive, and they come here for a reason. But yeah, I was a direct. I experienced it, and there needs to be some change or tragedy, happening with this, because we need to make sure that I don't want to sound nationalistic, but we're American. We have a way of doing things, and we have a way of, even though we're a melting pot of all cultures and religions, we have a certain pedigree that, like you said, goes back to the founding fathers, and that's invisible to some.
Mm. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not the absolute best and brightest. I mean, they can't even drive semi trucks. I mean, we've seen the craziness out on the roads, and we've seen more incidents since then. And we've actually seen some incidents happen out in the UK now that are happening with guys that don't know how to drive. It is a shame. I have friends that are out of work right now in the tech sector, and they're looking for work, and some of them have been looking work for like over 2 months now, and they still can't find anything. And it's really unfortunate. That's what it's come to, and even, people like to try to prop up, on the Hispanic side, Cesar Chavez, he wasn't some leftist. Like, he was against illegal immigration.
Wow.
He was, that's the thing, even if you're importing them and they're coming in through an H1B visa, they're still going to take wages from jobs. They're going to lower the wages, and you're going to get a subpar product. You're going to get subpar delivery on those products. And that's just the way that it goes. I mean, we're going to get are the goods that we're going to produce are not going to be as good as goods. That's just what it is. And unfortunately, it is costing a lot of Americans jobs. There are Americans that do want to work. They do want to have a good job. They want to be able to provide for their families in these, in the tech sector is a high paying sector traditionally, but we're going to start seeing those high paying tech jobs, those wages and those salaries are going to start coming down because they can just outsource it to people coming into the country.
Yeah. Any
I wanna
thoughts,
talk-
Chad?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Rick, real quick. To your point, I think you kind of hit it right on the head. Like a lot of the people coming into the country, they don't have you coined that the American spirit term, but I think it's like a grit, the American grit, that drive, the determination we've seen in prior generations that built this country, right? We didn't go from some backwater country, 250 years ago to now a global superpower by letting in, millions upon millions of people that don't share our culture, that don't share common ancestry or history with us, don't share even our values, right? I mean, it's we're watching a demographic replacement in real time, and it's been happening for decades. It's happened under every administration going back as far as, I mean, you talk about early 20th century, really, but we're watching the inheritance of my children, your children, and the future generations being taken away because our leaders are not. They don't have the fortitude. They don't have the moral fiber to say, no. You know what? America is for certain people. It's for a certain class. It's for a certain group with a shared cultural history, right? Not even skin color, but the fact that we share a common culture, a common ethos, and for many of these people coming in, they're foreign to that, right? They've look at tech, like Angel was saying, look at trucking, logistics. I mean, look at the H-1B visa program itself. A lot of it's sort of nepotistic in the way that they grant visas to their friends, to those of the same culture as themselves, right? So the whole system is sort of not working the way it's intended, certainly, and it's not benefiting Americans, right? I did watch that Trump clip. I think it was with Laura Ingraham. He said she was questioning him on the 600,000 the Chinese students coming into the country, and it's like, well, those 600,000 seats could go to American kids. Why are we giving them to what we've been told for decades, our adversary, China, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we've been told? China, like we've been told that, these are our adversaries politically and economically, but we're going to let these 600,000 students in from a country that is known to steal our secrets, to steal our patents, to take our trademarks, to steal any information they can and bring it back to the mainland so that they can copy it or make it better or, what have you. But it goes to show you that sort of this MAGA movement, it's not really America first in the sense that they're looking out for all the interests of all these other countries and all these other groups except Americans.
Yeah,
So,
there was a comment that was made on I don't know if you watched Taylor Marshall's show yesterday. There was a super chat of a guy who came in. It's like, I'm Hindu. I'm running for lieutenant governor, and I'm anti a certain group of people that have been kicked out of a bunch of countries. What do you think? And he's like, bro, it's the wrong show. This is Christian patriot. Like, I don't want you, running for lieutenant governor. I don't want you running for local government. I don't want you running the HOA.
Yeah.
Like, our cultures are so completely different. I know I live in a neighborhood that is very diverse from that part of Asia, and there are a lot of them here in the neighborhood. And I mean, they are taking up space. They are putting forth their culture, and at the same time, it is a more dangerous place to be. I don't want my daughters walking out, without my German Shepherd. I have a German Shepherd. My oldest daughter will go out for a run with him, and I'm fine with that. But, I don't want my young kids walking around the neighborhood by themselves, because I'm afraid of what could happen to them.
Yeah, we're having some connection issues, so we can't see the chats from YouTube. But Stefano Mercy says they were unemployed for 4 months recently as an experienced electrical engineer with a master's degree, and it speaks to a couple of points that you guys brought up. The first one, let's talk about the education system that Trump vehemently defended, which everybody just went, "What are you talking about?" When he said, "Well, we don't want the colleges to go." Yeah, we do. We want them all to go out because, first of all, it's an adversary to the social progress of these United States, because colleges supported by the federal loans, they're importing as many people, and every one of those 600,000, the administration came out and said, "Oh no, we're going to train them and go back home." first of all, what Trad said is like, okay, so you're going to train the people that are actually going to be, working against us, let's just say in AI. Brilliant idea. And secondly, no, they're not, because everybody knows that colleges are backdoor immigration systems. Because as soon as they come in, how many people are here on student visas? One of the highest population of overstayed student visas are Canadians of all people, because they come down here and then they're like, oh, I like it because it's not 1,000, it's not negative 200 degrees. So they stay here, and it's a national security threat simply because you have the Chinese who are coming in, adversaries going back home. B, you have the student comes in. Oh, well, I need my mama and papa. So they come here and now they're on that chain migration. And so it's just one thing after another. And I think a lot of people are just really disappointed. I haven't seen President Trump get dragged on X ever the way I've seen him get dragged in the last 24 hours. Deservedly so. And Angel, you said not to be nationalistic. It's a shame that the education system has made that, because Indians are nationalistic, Mexicans are nationalistic that come here, Polish are, wherever you go to Italy, you go to Spain, they love their country. And yet when you say, I really like being in these United States, they go, do you? And it's like, yeah, I do. And it's okay that I should.
You can't even wear an American flag to school in some of these districts because you're going to get called out or suspended. Meanwhile, we had the immigration protest not long ago, and there was a bajillion Mexican flags flying over American soil while they're throwing stones and rocks at our immigration, our police forces. I mean, this is where we're at.
Yep. I believe that, nationalism, could go any way. It can be interpreted in any way, like we see with the Constitution. It is interpreted in so many ways in the Supreme Court, in the House, in the Senate, by the right, by the left, by the center, all political it's twisted whatever way, right? Whatever flavor they want to make it. But the reality is, if you are proud of your country and and what has been built, like Joy, I believe Joy and Trad said this earlier, generations of war that has forged this country into what we are through through industry and revolution and everything you can imagine. All that is now forgotten. People don't care, and they're now just focused on, the system. And we talk about the education system, and Charlie Kirk used to talk about this all the time. Yes, I'm saying Charlie Kirk. Yeah, and that could ignite some big emotions. But I'll tell you what, like, he was right, and there's a lot of things that have been broken recently because of these influx of immigration coming into this country, where things are trying to be changed.
Yeah, and
Hey, I'll jump in real quick while you gather your thought, Rick. I was watching a video this morning of an old veteran on Remembrance Day. It's what they call Remembrance Day for Veterans Day over in Great Britain. And they were asking him, well, how do you feel? He's old. I mean, the guy's like 90 plus years old. And he's like, I'm so disappointed. And this is where we've ended up. Like, I'm so disappointed. Like, it wasn't, in his own words, it wasn't worth it. I feel like it wasn't worth it. And this is that generation that war back in those days was a different war. I mean, it was the dawn of, full auto machine guns and things like that. I mean, war was literal hell during those times. And to hear, and you could hear the heartbreak in his voice. You could see the true disappointment he had on his face, and the lady interview felt so like, it almost seemed like she was going to try and steer the conversation somewhere else. And the other interviewer guy was like, no, let's say a little bit more, and it was just really heartbreaking to hear that, and as a veteran myself, I am not happy where my country is right now. This is not what I fought for. I'll say it. I'm not afraid to say this is not what I fought for, but I'll do whatever's in my power to fight to get things back on track again. And I think that's one of the reasons why veterans are very ostracized. The Department of Veterans Affairs has been weaponized to try to get veterans guns away from veterans. If at the first sign of anything, like, hey, are you having trouble paying your bills? If you say yes to that, they are going to take away your guns. I've had it happen to friends of mine. They will do it, and because they fear, they know veterans. You know, from a nationalism standpoint, we want to love our country. We're proud of our country. We're proud of our sacrifices. I'm a 100% permanent total disabled veteran. I'm proud of of the work that I did over there. But looking at how it's paid off in the end, it's like, man, was it really worth it? Like, was it really worth breaking my body for this? It really does make you kind of sit back and ponder a little bit.
And it's really, I got my point. Thank you, Joe. Joey, for giving me a second to find it. From a Catholic standpoint, folks, this is usury. What we're seeing, the H-1B visa system and all the problems that stem from it stem from usury. Because, despite the fact that they are coming in and taking their jobs, they're also they're essentially slave labor. The way they're being treated now, they don't care because whatever, but they're doing it for lower wages. They're doing it because these people don't talk back. And it's all in pursuit of more money. It's all in the pursuit of more profits. I'm not trying to sound like a socialist or any like a hippie liberal or whatever, but that's the basic fact.
I mean, it's one of the core things of our faith. I mean, the faith tells you what's one of the three sins that cries out to God for vengeance: defrauding, not paying an honest day's wage.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And even Laura Ingraham said, the only way to reinstitute high-paying jobs, and that is a national security threat, because the more unemployed native-born people, regardless of color, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, that's a problem. That is an absolute problem, especially men. I know everybody focuses on white men, but it's African Americans, it's Hispanics, it's all men. It's just in different flavors, however you want to slice it. The more of those who are unoccupied, and for lower, younger generations, Gen Z and so forth, the ones who follow Fuentes, not to throw a grenade in here, the ones that can't seem to, find a girlfriend or set up or buy a house. Now we have 50-year mortgages. Why don't we just make it a 100-year mortgage, or any of these other kinds of, all of these things are just matches on this fire that it doesn't seem like the Trump administration has any idea how to get out of any of it their own way at this point. And it's really I think it's really distressing for a lot of people, guys, to watch the administration throw out hype videos, and Trump, does stuff on Truth Social. Then he's like, yeah, how about 15-year car loans? Like, how about no? How about
they don't even last 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially if you get like a Tesla, you're going to go through 3 Teslas by the time you get that done. But it's just, all of these things are problems that are stemming from just a lack of being able to address the crisis, which is people who are here, who are born here, are feeling they are being robbed of an opportunity to even participate in the American dream.
I want to jump in here too, Rick. What Joey was saying, I did watch that clip, Joey, of that veteran in the UK. I saw a similar clip actually of an American veteran at Arlington National Cemetery. He had a similar interview. They were asking him questions about, well, how do you feel about the country you live in today, or what you fought for? And he said a quote that resonated with me was, he feels like a stranger in his own country. He feels like a stranger, right? The fact that what he fought for all those years ago, what these veterans of the great generation fought for, for World War II and onwards, the world they grew up in no longer exists. Heck, the world I grew up in no longer exists, right? The world each of us has grown up in no longer exists. We've watched the inheritance, like I said earlier, of our children, of our country, literally be thrown in the trash can. Everything that all the veterans of every war have fought for is being thrown away in real time. And I mentioned it last week, demographics are destiny. I mean, we can't keep letting millions upon millions of people into the country who have no shared cultural history here, who have no ties to this country or the nation, who haven't fought for it, who haven't bled for it, who don't respect our customs and our cultures, and instead seek every opportunity to tear down all the institutions of our country that make it great, right? I mean, our people, right? The American people is a unified people shared around an ethos, a culture, a tradition. And when you try to invert that and say, well, no, we can just let in everybody, everybody is an American. Well, if everybody's an American, then nobody is. Okay. It has to mean something. It has to mean, a very particular thing, and not even at a particular time, but it's certainly what it meant to be an American, 30, 40, 50 years ago is no longer the case today. Right. And I can tell you, in my neighborhood here, You know, with my children, I used to be able to go out as a kid and come home when the street lights come on.
Yep.
My daughters and my son are not going to be doing that. I can tell you that right now, because the social cohesion, the trust, the social trust, right? We don't live in a high trust society anymore, right? We used to, perhaps in one point in time, we used to be living in safe neighborhoods. We used to have law and order. We used to have insane asylums to where we could put crazy people away who need the help that they need. But now it's like the inmates are running the asylum. The inmates are running the prison. And we're here along for the ride. We're just trying to make it day in and day out, provide for our families, protect our children, and make sure that we give them a good future. But we're watching it all disappear in real time. And it's insidious. I think it's supremely evil. And it's the duty of every generation to provide a better future for your children than you had. Or at least that's my goal, right? And I think with generations of the past, we've seen that be inverted, especially with boomers. I'm gonna crap on boomers a little bit here, but they were probably the first generation to say, well, you know what? No, I think I'm gonna buy a timeshare in Tahiti instead of giving any inheritance to my kids.
Yep.
So it's certainly something to think about. But demographics are destiny, and we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, just to jump back in just real quick, Rick, before we move on, I've seen there's a few podcasts. I know there's a couple of newer podcasts from like the Zoomer crowds, in the Catholic world, and you can see, like, I see that some people are like, oh, I'm so off put by these guys because they're cynical and they're disillusioned. I mean, they're disillusioned. I get it. I get why they have the attitude that they have towards everything, towards the hierarchy, towards all the different generations that come before them. I get their cynicism. I get why they're so angry and they're lashing out at everybody. I mean, I'm disappointed too, and I haven't done enough. My parents' generation hasn't done enough, and I get, so all the Zoomers that are out there that are angry, I get you. I get where you're coming from. Because you can see it. You can see what's coming down the pipe, and you don't like it, and you're like, somebody step up and do something. And somebody does need to step up and do something, but I get, for all the Zoomers that are out there, if you happen to tune in and watch the show, I get where you're coming from, and I feel you. I really do.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. I look at them and I say, I get it. 100% where your frustration is, especially when they're talked down to, as Trad said, by older generations. Like, oh, well, if you want a house, there's one guy who's been getting dragged all over the internet because he put out this post. Well, why don't you stop going to Starbucks and why don't you put down your $1,000 phone? And people are like, I don't have any of those things and I don't have a job. So, homie, how am I supposed to save up? Or I'm working $15 an hour at some part-time job. How am I supposed to save up for a house? How am I supposed to do these things? Well, because the boomers, and we can all say, they inherited the greatest set of circumstances anybody in history has ever been handed. And, we can call them out. They let sloth get to them. They let, greed get to them. They let all the, the comforts get to them, and they kind of just pushed it off. And now they want to get mad when younger generations are saying, listen, man, you guys stole from us. You stole our inheritance, especially when you look at the average age of a house is either 40 or 60. The first time you buy a home, it's at least 40 years old. That's just, and the reason is older generations are hoarding wealth. They're hoarding senior positions. They're hoarding all of these things. And younger generations are just asking for a chance. And instead of being given a chance, they're told, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, young man, and you'll figure it out. And it's just it's antithetical to Catholic teaching. There's no charity there. It's really just like, I got mine. I got my timeshare. I got my retirement. I got my 401k. I got all my things. You figure it out yourself. And that, those generations, the boomer generation, that wasn't done to them. They were taught these things. They were given a pathway forward. I could talk about it for hours because it just angers me the way that boomers, when you try to get accountability from them, they get so mad. They get so mad when you try to just say, hey, you messed up. You can change now, but they just don't want to change. It's awful in that regard. So, all right, let's before we fall face first down that rabbit hole, let's move on to our next one. We're talking about immigration as well, but how do you get rid of immigrants or illegal undocumented illegal aliens when they are being supported in going out and engaging in warfare essentially with federal agents. It's absolutely a shock that this is becoming so normalized. It just goes on a headline and people just read through. This is something that you wouldn't look at 10, 15 years ago as, oh, you don't shoot a federal agent. Whatever I think of the feds, I'm not a huge fan of them, but you know, immigration is a federal jurisdiction right now. And if the feds are trying to enforce law, then you shouldn't be shooting at them. And the fact that even here up in Dallas, the police chief in Dallas was like, yeah, I don't think we're going to work with ICE. I think it's, not, and it's like, what the heck is your job? Your job is to enforce the law. But it's all political. It's all, left and right. Which team do you support? And it's going to lead to this. Somebody's going to get shot, and it's going to, unfortunately, gentlemen, and we'll go from Angel up so we can get a little bit of difference. It's going to lead to tragedy when ICE agents are, severely, even critically injured in one of these raids. So it's just and the reason for the article is just the escalation continues, folks. And I don't know what you guys, Angel, I don't know what your thoughts is about federal agents being hindered from being able to do their jobs and how this is escalating tensions.
This is a cause and effect of what's happened. And I know that you guys have probably heard this 1,000 times, maybe more. But in the last 4 years, where our government had in the executive branch leadership in which opened the floodgates and allowed anything and anyone to come in, this is a national security problem as we speak. Okay? I mean, I'm going through some notes right now. I mean, you talk about Japan, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, Denmark, any of those countries, you know what they do to the illegal immigrants, people that cause crimes that are not supposed to be there, they put them in their prisons and extradite them. Why can't we do the same? Why are we demonized for trying to do the same? I get it. People are coming here, they're crossing the border, they're trying to get a better life, but they're going about it the wrong way. You can't remain in the shadows. We're a sovereign country. We're not the Wild West. And that's what it is right now. The volatility right now is probably worse than it was during the Biden administration because we're trying to make it right now. Like those handful of countries that have virtually zero gun violence, and little crime. I understand they're way smaller countries. They're easier to police, but it's going to be a long haul, and we got to pray that we can maintain this course another 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also, one of the biggest problems with this whole deal is you have the universities, you have the student activists, you have the politicians, and you have the media fomenting this attitude towards, you're being terrorized. This is the feds are committing violence against you, even though you chose to came here illegally and then brought your kids or had kids while you were here. And then they paint this picture like, oh, we're going to deport the parents or we're going to separate the kids, no, just deport the kids too. They need to go where their parents are at, but this is our political system right now has made this possible, and it's gone so far forward that honestly, I really don't see the way to get back to the way that it was. I really don't. I wish I had better news for you guys. The only thing I can tell you is start preparing and plan accordingly, because I honestly don't see a way out of this until, like you said earlier, Rick, like get rid of the universities. I mean, that would be one of the big steps to getting that done. But again, I really don't see it happening because, again, like we do have an electoral process, and you get one from the right and you get two on the left, and the conservatives are conserving what the progressives put forward, and I don't ever see a way going back. I really don't. I hate to be a doomer on this, but I really don't see this going back anytime soon.
Yeah, this story reminded me of what happened, maybe a month, 2 months ago, the Dallas detention center that had that attempted shooting. I mean,
Yep.
these events are just popping up now, seems like on the regular. And again, that volatility that you guys have been discussing, it's been fermenting for years. I mean, the summer of love in 2020, when half the country burned, you guys remember that? They were saying mostly peaceful protests, by the way, as they were fermenting all this hatred for the police and hatred for law enforcement. And look, I'm not a back the blue guy. Again, I'm kind of like Rick. I think I'm not a Fed guy. I don't really care for the feds all that much. But I recognize that law enforcement has a function here, and the immigration and customs enforcement, that's federal jurisdiction, right? These local law enforcement agencies, these counties and whatnot, they're saying, oh, that's not our jurisdiction, we're not going to help you. It's like, well, what are you good for? Why am I paying your salary with my taxes if you're not going to enforce the law that you swore to uphold? What good are you? Right, at this point, you're kind of like a traitor to the country because you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? And at the very least, you're not helping. At the worst, you're actively impeding, right, federal law enforcement in trying to get these criminals out of here, to get the violent offenders out, to get the illegals out.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad you brought up that mostly peaceful thing, because again, over the weekend, UC Berkeley, there was a conservative that was attacked, and the news over there said this was a mostly peaceful demonstration, and they cut to a video of a guy just getting beat on the ground, and this is mostly peaceful now. Like, this is the new standard for mostly peaceful is somebody who's standing up to this tyranny that we're getting shoved down our throat, and they're getting kicked on the sidewalk by a gaggle of wild animals. It seems like it seems like that's how the left acts. They act like a bunch of uncaged wild animals, feral animals, and that's being deemed as mostly peaceful now. Go figure.
That story was amazing to see. I mean, I think I saw a still shot after that of like the guy's face, and he's just bloody and broken, and he's just like beat to a pulp. But like the story we're told is that, oh, don't worry about it. Don't believe what your eyes are telling you, right? Everything's under control. There's no violence here. But clearly, any rational person can see that these kinds of situations are quickly spiraling. They're quickly popping up, and things are going to get more violent. Again, I kind of agree with you, Joey. Things are going to get worse before they get better. So I think now, if you haven't been, now is the best opportunity to kind of start prepping, training, and getting your preparedness in order.
So there's two things here. I'm with Joey in the fact that I've said it on this program before. I believe balkanization is the next natural step. What form or fashion that takes, I don't know, but I believe the system is too far broken to be fixed, quote unquote, by any kind of federal election, because it's just an exercise of my team won, so now your team gets punished. And if you're just operating on that type of a system, there's no way forward from that. And then finally, the idea of how to what point, when you have sheriffs and police chiefs like one in Dallas and then of course in Los Angeles and Chicago, who are just openly mocking the feds when it comes to this specific things, folks. Not a Fed guy, but this specific thing. This is in the Constitution. This is actually a law on the books. When does Trump actually pull the trigger on something like the Insurrection Act? Because we're into that type of territory now. These sheriffs, these mayors, these local officials. And I know when I say that, some people, like my good friend Steve Cunningham, will probably argue about this tomorrow night because he's a local guy. And I agree with him on 99.9% of it. But at this point, you have the local is broken as well. So at what point does something like the Insurrection Act get put into action here to try and do any kind of restoration of law and order? It's a question that more people need to be talking about. And I'm surprised. I know Trump has hinted at it, but Trump does this all. I may do it, I may not. And it's just these hemming and hawing type stuff. And I don't know if he should or shouldn't, but it's getting to a point where a lot of people are almost demanding it from his base, or demanding something be done.
Yeah, they haven't posted the deportation numbers, I don't think, since July, right? Because we all know they've been pretty abysmal across the board, largely speaking. And the optics of all these immigration rates have been pretty bad. I mean, you can look at a lot of people on the right, moderate right, and even more centrist people. They're not really a big fan of it. We on the more dissident right wing, the more radical right, we're kind of like, okay, he needs to bump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those up a little bit. But I agree with you. We talked about it last week too. When the left has power, what do? They wield it. they use the power. They use what they have at their disposal to inflict as much damage and to push their agenda as far as they can. Trump is a lame duck president. All right, this is his last term. Okay, I'm not to say that he could just do whatever he wants, but like, okay, man, kind of do whatever you want, like in a nutshell with regards to the immigration stuff, because I mean, you're talking about the future of the country, quite literally the future of the country, right? And it's getting quickly divided along these ideological lines where the left wants a country that is essentially no longer America, and the right, at least the real right, wants to preserve or restore the country to its former glory and maintain the traditions that we've held for generations. So those two diametrically opposed views can't live in harmony. So you're left with the option of, okay, when our side's in power, what do? We play by the rules. We kind of just go along to get along. We play patty cake every 4 years, and then we'll get back into power after we win enough votes, right? You're not going to fix this with more votes, better policy, better candidates. I don't think those are valuable solutions at this point. So I think you need to detach. If you're not willing to play the game, don't play at all. I mean, detach, balkanize, get out of these cities, get out of these locations, form a bulwark on your own and form a community on your own so that you can have a foothold in society and eventually gather others of like-minded nature to your cause. So I'm thinking Trump should, honestly, at this point, because he's halfway through his first year, right? I mean, deportations are not that high. I think Obama still had higher record deportation numbers from the last time they were posted. I mean, it's the optics are terrible all around. He's been making blunders politically here with all these interviews he's been doing. He's losing the support from his base, and he's getting nothing out of it for doing all these little political games. So I think he should just pull the trigger, go out there and say, hey, look, this is federal now. You're all under our jurisdiction. We're going to round up the illegals. We're going to get them out of our country, and we're going to make our streets safe again.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch up on the Insurrection Act of 1807. I have some notes here. And this act authorizes the president to deploy U.S. military and federalized National Guard units to suppress insurrection, rebellion, or domestic violence. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
And it says, and to enforce federal laws when state authorities are unable or unwilling to do so. So I'll leave it there.
Seems pretty cut and dry to me.
Yeah,
That's
same
one
here.
of those few laws that are actually like not 7,000 pages long. It's like, hey, do it.
Yeah, hey, do the thing. Do the thing.
You could just do things. You could just do things like enforce a law. So if everybody's good on that, that's actually a perfect segue to the main topic of the show, which is, all right, we've all kind of said, balkanize, get out, form communities. And a lot of people will say, well, Rick, Joey, Trad, Angel, how does one start such a thing? First of all, is if you have one in your area, reach out to the Catholic Land Movement, see what they can do, because they're a great resource. But if not, in addition to that, we should really look into the monastic lifestyle, because we were talking backstage, the four of us, and it's just another example of the fact, and it is a fact, that whatever problem arises in this earthly realm, in the city of man, it is solvable, and the church has a solution for you. It just depends on whether you want to look at it. And I know when we say, what about the monastic lifestyle? It's like, Rick, you want me to go get like a scapula and put it on and walk around? No, I don't want you to do that. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. If you think that's a great idea, you can probably get a good costume at this price, post Halloween. But the idea is, what is the lifestyle of a monk? What do they do? And the fact is we have 5 bullet points here that you could take into your life and into your account that would be a great way to start thinking, and even turning your home, even if it's in the city or wherever, and turning it into a mini monastery, right? And focused on serving the city of God instead of the city of the man. And we'll look at the first bullet point, and then I'll throw it to the council here, where the first point is, it's work as prayer and balance. And I think that's a big deal, because right now, a lot of Catholics, and even some, no matter how trad they are or not, it's not an attack on anybody, no matter what. A lot of people are getting brought down, with the bad deportation numbers, the fact that Trump isn't doing anything, the H-1Bs, that they feel like they're being brought down because they're too involved in the city of man. And you know, you have to take this idea of a work and prayer. I know the fun buzzword in HR circles is work-life balance. Here we want to use work prayer balance, right? We want to have the principle of prayer and work, which teaches that spiritual focus and productive labor, they go hand in hand. And I think the more people, the more Catholics, ladies and gentlemen listening in the audience, the more Catholics take the idea of incorporating prayer into your everyday life, whether you're doing the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or there's many different devotions that you can do. It'll help you be more peaceful, and it will actually give you a stronger resolve against the despairs of the world. So we'll go Trad, Joey, and Angel in thoughts to that first point. Work and prayer is balance.
Yep, I mean, the motto of my patron saint, our great Saint Benedict, the father of monasticism, or et labora, right? It's tied to all of our Catholic lives, whether you're a lay person, whether you're married, whether you're a priest, whatever vocation you have in life, that is the ultimate calling. Work and pray, right? For whatever vocation you have. And tying in sort of the theme of our shows, this show in general, and prepping and preparedness, the monastic life is sort of the archetype of Catholic ordered Christian living, right? It's a society within society. They're detached from the world, yet they have, order. They radiate divine order into the world by the way they live. They they are self-sufficient. They order everything they have and everything they do to the glory of God, but they live amongst a community of like-minded people and individuals for the glory of God and for the world. And they live and work, many of the similar things that we do, right, in our daily lives, except they take vows of, obviously poverty, obedience, chastity, and whatnot. But the central theme of their life and all of our lives is that first bullet point: work and prayer. Whatever vocation you have in life, be sure that you're well adjusted to it, you're good at it, and you're fulfilling it. And then make sure that in tandem with that, you're living a good spiritual life, right? Praying the rosary every day, celebrating the sacraments, going to confession often, right? Whatever vocation you have in life, you can do both of these things. And building a community around those central themes is going to help you not only your spiritual life, but those of your family, your friends, and your entire community around you.
Yeah, great points on there. And again, I'll I'll say this is I've noticed this amongst a lot of the homesteaders out in East Texas. I'm familiar with a lot of them, and they have such structured days. And it has to be because they have to get up and they got to get the kids, going for homeschool. But the kids also have their chores. They have their morning prayers. And fortunately for myself, I have a good friend again, Taylor. Anybody knows Taylor Marshall? The man is extremely busy. He works. He's the hardest working person I've ever seen. I mean, the man writes books. He studies philosophy. He has a podcast, but he also has a cattle ranch. And so I've had the again, being one of my best friends in the whole world. I've had the pleasure of being around him and his family very close and spending time out at his ranch. It's kind of a place for me and my family. We go out there together, and it's kind of a time to decompress, but also to kind of I always find that whenever we go out there, it's a time to get regrounded and forming good habits, and when you go work with Taylor, I mean, you get up early in the morning, he's praying. He's doing his morning offerings, praying his prayers that he has, his devotions that he has, and then they get to work. They get to work, they work hard, and before you know it, hey, it's 9 a.m., let's do the Angelus. Okay, we do the Angelus. And then we get back to work again, and we work, and then we take a break, and then it's, time to pray the rosary or something else, and everything is just super structured, and it has to be because everything out there is dependent. All the cattle that are out there, the livestock that are out there, they are dependent on them being taken care of properly. At the same time, he also has to manage his other areas where he works very, very hard in. And he also has to, order all that around and still have a prayer life, still spend time, catechizing his children that are still, he still has young kids that are working their way through the sacraments, and I've noticed that not just about him, but a lot of people that are out in the rural areas that have disconnected from society, man, they seem to have some very ordered lives, and they seem to be just so much more peaceful than people who live here in the city. You guys still hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
So Angel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I had some notes prior to the show here, and Trad actually must have been inspired by my notes because I was thinking of the Benedictine order when it came to work and prayer, because that is their motto. Ora et labora in Latin means prayer and work. And this goes back centuries, right? I mean, I'm all about the prepping thing. I'm not the old crazy guy in the bunker with MREs and bullets and nothing else, right? No, we have a lot more going on here. We have seasonal gardens. We have egg-laying hens. We have bees. We have a lot of things that contribute, right, to this self-sufficiency we're working towards. We're looking into adding maybe dairy, goats, or sheep for multiple purposes at some point this coming year. But it goes back to all the aspects of monastic life and what they're able to do on their land and their praying and their work, and how disconnected they are or were to what the world is telling everyone else to do, right? They would retreat into their monasteries, and they had agriculture, craftsmanship. They procured their water and energy, established libraries, schools, hospitals. I mean, the Benedictine monks were the most influential group or organization in the Middle Ages for a reason. And that's what that organization, the Catholic Land Movement, is. Not, I mean, a shameless plug, right? But um, they're trying to bring back the people to the land. I know not everyone can do that, but if the network is there, we have a place where we can acquire our food and our goods. That's not the grocery store. I mean, could you imagine a farmer's market that is run by Catholics that are self-sufficient homesteaders, that you can go buy everything that you buy at the grocery store from them? I mean, that's a question I'm posing to the council now. I mean, imagine if we formed a bartering system in which we can sustain ourselves like that outside of all the noise of the world and focus on the prayer and our families and God. I mean, what do you all think?
No, I agree 1,000%. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I've heard a lot of people that say, oh, I got this going on, and I've got that going on. I mean, you can always retrain yourself to do things. It's going to require sacrifice. It's part of being a Catholic is sacrificing. I'm not exactly the most mobile person in the whole world myself, but I can still get stuff done. And we need to take that initiative and to do that part of the detachment. I think that's probably the hardest part for a lot of people to get away from, is to take that leap of faith, to detach from the world. And I agree 1,000% with you, Angel, on this. It's always been a dream of mine, is to buy 4 or 5 acres of land and open up some sort of co-op of farmers market that's Catholic based, where all the Catholics in the area can bring their goods, have their own stall, and sell their goods out to people. I mean, again, it just seems, not to say that people that don't live in the city don't have ordered lives. I know they do. I know a lot of great faithful Catholics, but we're seeing where society is going. We're seeing where we are being pushed in. Again, to use one of Taylor's, again, I'll bring him up a lot because I really admire the man. He catches a lot of flack, but for the people that don't know him and say a lot of bad things about him, you don't know the man. I know the man. I spent a lot of time with him. the man's life is properly ordered, has a deep spirit. I mean, a deep spiritual life. And this man has helped me out so many ways. My family out in so many ways. And he, even just from the basic thing, just giving us a place like, hey, we're going to be gone once you complete, stay out at the ranch for a couple of days, just get that time to decompress, But again, that hard leap of faith to detach, you're going to have to make sacrifices. And I'll show you a story of what we're going to do. I'm my wife, again, she should be at home with the kids. But again, we got into this situation with our house and, and where we live at before we kind of came back to the faith. I mean, we still have to put a roof over our kids' heads, but we are going to get her not working. We are going to make that leap of faith despite the loss of income from her income. And we're going to, take whatever equity we do have in our home, invest it in the land, and we're going to grow our own food. We're going to hopefully, again, be able to follow some of these rules. I mean, going all the way back to St. Augustine, he was like the first, for the monastic life, chastity, poverty, obedience, detachment from the world, appointment of labor, all of these things, caring for the sick, silence, reading during meals. I mean, how many people gather around the television and have their dinners, watching TV, read books, discuss the faith. These are all things that, again, that as Catholics, we are called to do. And if you find yourself frustrated and flustered and, just you feel totally overwhelmed by the world, well, this is a way out, but you're going to have to make some hard choices. You have to take some difficult steps.
I couldn't agree more.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Trad.
No, I was going to say I couldn't agree more with what Joey and what you said, Angel. I mean, we've all heard it, right? We are in the world, but we're not of the world, right? That's what we as Catholics understand our material world. The material is different from the spiritual. All right. And what monasticism is, for the listeners out there, you're probably wondering, okay, how does this monastic life, how does that all tie into me and my homestead or my prepping journey or whatnot? Well, I mean, read Luke. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Right? The monks in these monasteries, they renounce property, they renounce ambition, sensual pleasures, but they don't do it out of disdain for creation or disdain for the world, but they do it to reorder themselves, reorder their love, so that all things can be subordinate to God. Right? This principle of detachment from the world so that you can be divinely attached to God. Right? I think I'm going to coin that, so don't steal that, guys. But that's mine now. That's kind of central to the monastic idea here, that you're detaching from the world so you can attach yourself to God and of the higher spiritual things, right? That means cultivating a spirit of poverty, of simplicity. Like Joy was saying, and I don't have land personally, but I have family going out to ranches, going out to these huge properties, these acreages. It is simple, it is peaceful, it's freeing. Getting away from these cities, getting away from the concrete jungle that many of us, have to live in just because of the way the world, our society is set up for work and whatnot. Getting away from all that stuff and going out into nature, going out into the beauty of God's creation, it cultivates within you a spirit of poverty and simplicity. And that's sort of what these monks oftentimes do. If and I've been to, a Benedictine monastery way out in the countryside in Oklahoma. Many of you may have known of it, Clear Creek Abbey. It's a fantastic place. It's a great way to unwind, a great way to reorient your spiritual life and grow closer to God. So there's that aspect of cultivating a greater spirit, to the divine, to the simple. But it's also detaching from worldly enslavement. Like Joey was saying, a lot of Catholics, a lot of Christians, a lot of people in the world are attached to material things. They're attached to the world. They see themselves, oh, I can never do that. I can never, leave my job. I can never do this. It's always never, never, never. Instead of, okay, what would God want me to do? What is the will that God has for me? What is His plan for me? Because we're seeing how the world's going, gentlemen. We're seeing the world devolve. We're seeing the world go into very dark places, in very real time, all around us. And I mean, it's not going to be much longer before things kind of spiral here further. Where simply living in society and living in these urban, these modern places, it's going to be like near occasion of sin. I mean, quite frankly, it's like driving down the hallway. You see, you know, all these adult entertainment and these just provocative and degenerate and all these kinds of things in our world that are surrounding us each and every day. That's not the place we want to raise our families in. It's not the place we want to cultivate a good spiritual life for our children and for our spouses and whatnot. So cultivating cultivating a good spiritual life, it forces you to come to terms with, okay, am I of the world or am I in the world? right? I'm called to something higher. So great points from Joey and Angel. I couldn't agree more with both of those. I mean, a lot of us have to really look in the mirror and say, look, we have to reorient our spiritual life. We have to ask God, what is his will for us as Christians, as Catholics, whatever vocation you have in life. If you're married, you're single, especially if you're married, if you have a duty and obligation to your spouse and children, you have to protect and provide for them. And part of that is giving them the good spiritual foundation so that they know the faith, can defend the faith, and live it out in their lives. So, great points all around.
Yeah, and again, it goes down to what something Steve Cunningham talked about. He's been talking about it for I don't know how many years. He's been talking about these 15-minute cities, and I thought he was just full of it. I'm like, no way. Well, what did you know? Right here in Frisco, Texas, I'm less than 2 miles from my home. They're building a literal, in their terms, 15-minute cities. It is happening, guys. We are being herded. If you stay here in the city, you are going to be herded into a 15-minute city. So I mean, it's like for us, going to our traditional Latin Mass, it's a 40-minute drive for us on a Sunday with no traffic. Sunday, no traffic. It's 35 to 40 minutes away. And what's going to happen one day if they do these? Oh, we're having an ozone day, so you can't drive more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes from your house. Guess what? I'm going to be cut off from that. You will be cut off from that, and again, going back to the monastic lifestyle, one of the core tenets of it is an intense pursuit of God. It's an intense pursuit of God and is seeking through imitating Christ through rigorous, concentrated effort of prayer, study, and work.
Absolutely. One quick thing, and then we have a question from the chat. Father Ripper gives a great example when people ask him about, oh, how do I order my life? How do I get my life in order prayer wise? He goes, well, why don't you do the Angelus? And then people will go, well, do I have to get up at 6 o'clock to do it? And he goes, well, that's the problem because you won't get up at 6 o'clock to do the Angelus. So it's a very simple way to do that. Bellator asked us a question. I want to make sure I get to it. We can't show it because I'm having a connection issue, but he says, and this goes to everybody, what is your chief prayer devotions? Holy Face, Rosary, Liturgy of the Hours. We'll go Trad, Joey, and then Angel. And then I'll finish out. Yeah, what devotions do you go to? What do you go to devotions?
No, for me, I mean, I'd say the easy one's the Rosary, right? I try to do my Rosary every single night, but again, I often fail, and I need to get better at that. But something I have on my phone, a reminder every day at 12 o'clock, the Angelus. I pray the Angelus every day at 12 p.m. That's sort of my midpoint of the day where it's about lunchtime. I'm trugging along through the day, but the Angelus is like the prayer throughout the day that allows me to reorient, say, oh, all right, here's the scheduled time, pray the Angelus. It's oftentimes neglected by a lot of Catholics who don't even know the Angelus, who don't know how to pray the Angelus. But every day at 12 p.m., I pray the Angelus, and that's one of my favorite devotions to Our Lady, and it kind of helps me middle of the day, when I'm struggling on at work, to just kind of refocus, reorient myself, and then I can get through the rest of the day.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna do a plug here. So again, like I said earlier, we do have a 7-month-old special needs son. He has a lot of medical issues he's going through right now. We have seizures, we're having digestive issues. I mean, just everything you could think of, it's happening. And I felt myself just kind of like becoming discouraged, frustrated. I mean, dealing with insurances and getting to specialists. I mean, I'm seeing doctors a minimum of like 3 times a week right now. And, so it's easy to kind of to get out of your routines of praying the rosary and things. It can be easy to do that. So I'm going to do a plug here because I was praying very intensely when I was at Mass. Like, God, show me somewhere where I can get plugged back in, just really dial in, and get refocused and get reconcentrated again on my faith. And I found I don't like going to our bookstore because there's so many people coming to our parish now that it's like Black Friday in our bookstore every single Sunday. But something was just driving me after Mass to go in there. And I went in and I locked eyes with this book right here. It's the Baltimore Book of Prayers. It's from the Third Plenary Council of Baltimore. It's big. It's thick. It's hardback at $34.95. You can get it for cheaper on Amazon. But this book is literally everything that you need. It has your morning prayers, your evening prayers, your instructions for hearing Mass. It has a basic devotions for Mass, even serving the Mass. You want to serve a priest for Mass. So if things ever get real bad and you have to have a private Mass in your home and a priest shows up, you'll know how to say the Mass. And what I really like about this for all you preppers out there is right up here at the very front of the book, it gives you the table of movable feasts. So you will have Ash Wednesday, Easter Sunday, Ascension Day, all Corpus Christi, everything from now until the year 2074. It gives you every single day from now until the year 2074 for all of those feast days. And then on the following page, it gives you algebraic equation basically of how to find those same feast days in any year in this century or the next century. So I start out my day with the morning prayer. I have a little booklight that I bought. So I have my morning prayer, I have my evening prayer, I have examination of conscience. It has the Mass in here. And so it's something as simple as this right here can help you get dialed in. And it's all in one book. Serving the Mass, hearing the Mass, the feast days, everything, your basic catechism, your virtues, cardinal virtues, all of those things are right here in one book. And I tell you, this has been a great help for me in our crazy, hectic life right now with everything that we're going through. So if I can do this on 2 or 3 hours of sleep at night, anybody should be able to do this. And this is through Sophia Press, by the way.
Thank you, Joey. We'll definitely look into that. We've been looking for some resources and, a way to amplify our spirituality here, and through Catholicism. But I would say for us, probably the Angelus and the Rosary. We have some friends that we meet maybe once a month, and we'll do a Rosary at their place and a potluck with the community. We also here in season, which is now. Just got cold. We had the first freeze a couple of nights ago. We'll start doing Friday night bonfires and invite our friends over and, Catholic community. It's open and we get enough. We do some, we'll do a community rosary and potluck. And we kind of leave it fluid like that and open. But you guys let me know when I can circle back to the...
it's your time if you want to go.
Yeah, okay. Well, I want to circle back real quick to the what people were doing like prior to the Industrial Revolution, which is 1800 and 1900. I have some notes here. And, most people lived on small self-sustainable farms, before that. Like you were talking about, being herded into more restrictions and more, I believe it was Joey that was talking about that, and limiting our commutes and, families grew their own food, made their clothes, used local materials for tools and shelter. Production was mostly manual and domestic, right? But once all this happened, everything got more modernized. We got herded into the suburbia versus the country, and more dependent on the industrialized system. Everything from the education system to food, everything is controlled now. And we are like basically guinea pigs in this large system that we've been born in. And until we unplug from that and see what the land can give us, we're not going to see the fruits of it until, we're going to be forced to eventually. And I always say that, in a cataclysmic event, grid down scenario, government doesn't respond or recover, we're going to go back to the land. We're going to get together as communities or a post-apocalyptic world, maybe a nuclear exchange. I don't want to scare anyone here, but I'm just talking about hypotheticals, right? A lot of stuff that has happened in the movies in the past is happening now, from Terminator to who knows what, right? So, in the worst case scenario, we go back to a post-apocalyptic world. We're starting from scratch, and we're going to have to do these things. All the bullet points you have up there on the screen are completely parallel to, going back 100, 150 years to how people were living. And I don't think we really know the damage we're doing. The quality of life has, definitely changed. We're doing things that we weren't born to do and forced and herded to do things we weren't forced to do. And it's almost like our spirituality is being disrupted by all these things, and I go out in the world, and I just want to like throw my Costco card away, and every time I go into Costco, I see all these people there, and I'm like, man, like I'm actually part of this. No, and then I want to go to the farmers market and I compare them, and it's like, this is it's we need to do something, and and we're working towards finding that solution.
Yeah, great. That's a great point. Just real quick, just one quick little thought I had on that is, Angel, when you talked about, being herded out into the cities and industrial revolution, one of the biggest things that happened during that time is they took the fathers out of the home. They were no longer living on homestead. Now dad is going to a factory. And now modern times, you have dad working in a cubicle. The dad is out of the home. He's away from the sons. He can't guide his sons the way that they in the way of manhood. And because again, you're not going to be praying. You're not going to be working and praying. You can't do that with your kids if you're working, in a cubicle every day. I mean, you might have time for the rosary and maybe some spiritual reading at the end of the night, but that's going to be about it. I mean, our whole life needs to be centered around our faith and around our families.
And
Yeah,
that's what we talk about, going back to the land. A lot of this is, everyone was working in the homestead, where now we're being pulled away in suburbia with all these activities for the children, and we're not even present. We don't have, people don't have time for anything. Is that the kind of life that we want to leave, for the legacy we want to leave for our children? I think we got to figure something out quick.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. So one of my buddies, Stan, out in East Texas, Stan actually he slaughters his own pigs, and they had everybody from the church show up, and they helped slaughter pigs, and they got to take some meat home. These are little things that you can do as a community. And that's going to be one of our bullet points in a second. As a community, is to work together to accomplish a goal.
exactly. First of all, folks, I hope you're enjoying this. This is fantastic. Being able to listen to these guys just go at it, and hope you're enjoying the Council of St. Michael here. 2 points. The first point is my wife, her grandmother back in El Paso. My wife will, when she's cooking in the kitchen, she would say, "Oh, my grandmother used to just go out into her garden and get this," or she would just cut the head off the chicken, and then that's what we would have for dinner. Like the idea, and I've made this point a lot, and it really makes people mad. So many people waste their front lawn. We spend so much money on maintenance and making front lawns look good. And if you look at the amount of acreage you have, that front yard is valuable acreage that you could use to have a couple rows of just some raised garden beds or things like that. And that's kind of a shift we need to have as people. Now, of course, if you have an HOA, that's your own problem and that's on you. But for people who don't live in an HOA, you will be able to actually do these kinds of things where you could make raised garden beds and things like that, where you could actually start to create something. I'm not saying you're going to have a huge swath of food, but you could have something and start that process. And back to the devotions, for me, as somebody who's enrolled in the Brown Scapular, when I get up, I do the morning offering. I used to do the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I stopped doing it because it became too routine, too robotic for me. So I need to get back into that. I actually have another book that I'm going to get back into. Rosary is something I do as many I try to do it often. There are days where it gets over me. And for me, the Holy Face devotion is the devotion that I like to do a lot as well. Folks, if you think about it, it's an exorcism prayer, especially if you're feeling spiritually attacked or you're feeling depressed or despair. Good Holy Face devotion is a great way in the realm of spiritual warfare to really get after it. And then there's seasonal ones. Like right now, I'm doing the Purgatorian Manual for the month of November for the Holy Souls in Purgatory. So, it doesn't have to be all year round. You can pick out certain times. And then as soon as I get done, it's actually going to be funny on the 30th of this month into the 1st of December, I'm going to be doing 2 because I'm going to be finishing up the Purgatorian Manual. And then there's the St. Andrew Christmas novena that starts on the 30th. So I'm going to be juggling a couple novenas there for a couple days. So it's something that you find one that really speaks to you, and it's a blessing of the church. You have the St. Michael's chaplet. You have so many different chaplets, the chaplet of St. Joseph. There's so many different ones that most people don't even know about that you could look into. And there's so many offerings of the church that can speak to you specifically. So you just have to kind of do a little bit of research. Obviously, everybody, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm going to take this one, as Martha says, not on the team. don't pray the rosary. So as much as you can do it, so that's the one I feel like more Catholics need to do as much of that as possible. But yes, that's for me. Those are the devotions that I cling to throughout my daily life. But we can move on to the next one because everybody's been kind of talking about that. But it's the idea of community over isolation. Now, the monastic community, they rely on the communal bonds, which is almost antithetical to preppers. Preppers have the lone wolf mindset that's been kind of beaten into our heads through popular media and so forth. But the monks, they demonstrate mutual support. Shared responsibility strengthens resilience during hardship because people don't they may get the preps, the food, the bullets, the beans, all that stuff set, but they're not spiritually ready. They're not spiritually ready for the stress that a crisis event will put upon them. And especially if they're leading homes and they're leading families, the stress of everybody else looking to you. It's kind of funny that I think another reason why farmers and homesteaders are better off or good at this is because when you're leading your farm because all of those animals, they depend on you. And I'm not saying your family is cattle. Please don't take this as that. But in a way, your family is in the same position. They are looking to you to take care of them spiritually and all the other ways. So I think a reason why God in his infinite wisdom has the homesteading lifestyle is it really focuses men's leadership abilities as well in that regard. So we're going to go Trad. Who did we start with Trad? So we'll go Angel, Joey, and then Trad this time. Angel, what do you think about community over isolation?
Yeah, so the popular media romanticizes preppers as, you open a hole in the ground, you put a shipping container or a bus and fill it with supplies to last through the apocalypse, right? When the bomb falls, and then you're the only guy that comes out with the gas mask and the rifle, that survives. Well, that's not the way it works, right? you know, having a network of a community. And I'm not a traditional prepper. I'm more of a I guess I call it a dynamic prepper because of my military unconventional warfare experience and the way that things have evolved in the past like 20 years. Um, eh, you know, uh, I always say that in the prepping community, those that have a community are the ones that are going to survive. Like we've been talking about, monastically, Catholic land movement, whatever we talk about. If you have a system where, certain individuals produce or have a certain livestock or produce a certain good that you don't, well, you barter and trade with what you produce that they don't, and vice versa, right? The cattle farmer, you know, gives meat for the exchanges meat for eggs or honey or wax, and or borrows someone's log splitter. It's a community system where uh, you know um, it can work. It can work almost perfectly in a way that, in a sense, that a single person could not make that happen. They cannot put the work. Look at people in Alaska. They stock up living in cabins off grid in Alaska. Use them as an example. They they stock up on wood all spring and summer. So when the winter comes, they know that all they're doing is checking their traps and maybe going for one or two hunts during the season, maybe ice fishing, and that's it, right? Because the weather's so extreme, north of the Arctic Circle. So, you know, if it wasn't for people around them to, trade and commune with, then they probably wouldn't survive. And I think community over isolation is the key.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on this a little bit is from a little bit of a slightly different angle is a community. Us being veterans, a bunch of us guys here are veterans on this panel here. Is that the Marines need somebody to give them a ride. So they need the Navy. The Marines when they're on the ground, they need CAS, close air support. Well, they can rely on the Army, Apaches, depending on, or the Air Force. It's a cohesive unit, and it's going to be the same way with a community in the monastic life, especially for men. I'm fortunate to be part of a really good rosary group on most Tuesday nights. We meet up, We pray the rosary. We have dinner together first. We sit down. We have a good dinner together. We have good conversations about fatherhood and things like that. We then pray the rosary together. Then we do a Bible study together. We go line by. We pick a chapter. We work book through book. We're in the book of St. John right now, and we work chapter through chapter, and we discuss it. And then we spend the rest of the night just kind of shooting the breeze, and talking about life and everything that we have going on in it. And it gives us dads a chance to kind of see how other dads are doing it, or we can get some advice when we're having a life struggle. We have that at our church. At Modern Day, we have the St. Joseph Guild. They meet up the first Tuesday of every month. And here's the deal, guys. If you start something like that, don't be discouraged if it's not like a huge overnight success. It took about 1.5 years, 2 years to really get that thing dialed in. And, they have benediction, they have a little bit of adoration. Father gives a homily on being a father, being a dad, and being a man in these modern times. And then they go out and they have a bonfire, and they'll have a couple of drinks, smoke pipes and cigars, and discuss life. And kind of the same thing we do with our Rosary Cynical group on Tuesdays. They do that, the first Tuesday of every month. And again, that just goes to show, us men, we do need each other. There are men that are in my Rosary group that their spiritual life is so much stronger than mine. Their knowledge is so much stronger than mine, and I can lean on them. And I can't put into words how much they have helped me over these last few years that we've been doing this. There's been so many things that I've dealt with over these past, especially here in the last 7-8 months since the new baby got here. They have really helped anchor me and to keep me grounded and to keep me focused, and that community part of it is a big deal, and that's going to carry over. Whenever I move out to East Texas, I'm hoping to be close to, where Taylor's at and some other of my buddies are out there at. And we trust each other. We have a bond together that's already developed. And if they need something, if they need help on their place, I'm going to go help out. If I need help on my place, they're going to come help out. And that's what it's really all about, guys.
Yep, great points from Angel and Joey there. Iron sharpens iron. We need community. No man is an island. Nobody can live on their own. We're social creatures, right? As humans, we need community. We need to, form these bonds of fellowship and friendship to, further our families, but also help ourselves, help us grow our spiritual lives as well. And for tying this into, the monastic lifestyle, it's community and hierarchy for the monks, right? A monastery, it's not a democracy, but it's more like a family under a rule where they have abbots, they govern as spiritual fathers. Catholic communities, prepping communities, they can emulate this, with local leadership structures grounded in, the virtues, obedience, charity, chastity, humility, etc. Not personal ego or power struggles. We have to understand that we're all in this fight together, and within your communities, making sure first of all, one, you're all of one mind, you're all of one accord. You have the same goals in mind to keep yourself safe, to protect your communities, to protect your faith, your culture, your traditions, and make sure that your way of life isn't wiped out, right? From the modernist world, from the evils of society, etc. And to Joey's point, you need that community to strengthen yourself so that you can strengthen each other. And I think for a lot of people, they kind of neglect that aspect of the prepping and whatnot. But you need to have a community around you. You need to have people you can rely on, that you can trust when you're in a pinch and you need that extra helping hand. Hey, buddy, I got your back. Just let me know when and where, and I'll be there. That's often neglected, and it's a very key and critical part of these communities.
Yeah, I think once again, Angel, Joey, and Trad just absolutely knocked it out of the park. I like this because there's really nothing else I get to add to it, because these guys absolutely they cleared the basis for me. One thing that I like to talk about with different groups of guys that I have that I consider very close to me is the concept of locking arms, especially as men, because the world wants to break men and separate, especially men of good faith, because that's the easiest way to attack us because of the stress we carry as fathers, providers, and so forth. And so when we can lock arms, whether the community we're trying to develop here at the council or your local church or whatever the case may be, where you can reach out and say, listen, guys, I'm having a tough time right now. If you can remember me in your rosary or whatever the case may be, going out for, hey, if you're close enough to somebody, hey man, I'm having some struggles. I know you've dealt with this. How do you deal with it? Because the world wants us to be sheltered, and they want us to be isolated, and they want us to be broken is the biggest thing. The enemy wants good, faithful Catholic men broken. And the monks realize that. And the monks realize that, especially in spiritual life, those guys are in spiritual warfare constantly. I know when Father Nix came on our show a couple of weeks back, the one of the things that was relayed is how much he's in prayer, because if he's not, the spiritual attacks that he will deal with. Father Ripperger is the same way. He was on Timcast. He was talking about the fact that he has to be in prayer for so many hours a day, because the spiritual attack, the closer you try to become as the to your potential as a Catholic man, the angrier the enemy is going to get, and the more attempts they are going to do to bring you back, to separate you from the community, from God, from all of these things. And that's when you need to reach out to your brothers or your close friends and be like, I'm hurting right now. I need you guys to lock arms. I need you to storm heaven for me and really get my back on this one. And I think, because men are starting to do that. Like we're good, like gym bros. You'll help out. Oh, we'll go work out together, do all these other kinds of things. We'll go to the range, stuff like that. But we're still kind of not neglecting, but we're almost not embarrassed, but we don't understand that, hey, I need to reach out to, I need your help on the spiritual front as well. And that's something that we can rely on. We can learn from the monastics, is that they focus just as much, if not more, on the spiritual warfare. And then they kind of let the ways of the world, through their routines, which we'll talk about in a second, kind of work themselves out in that regard. So yeah, community is huge. Especially in a transient society that we have today, and the fact that we are all kind of broken up and kind of isolated and so forth. So if you have to do your communities virtually at this point, then don't be afraid to do those kinds of things as well. Which brings to our next one. We've kind of talked about this, the simplicity breeding stability. We've talked about moving out to a simpler place, or even just dialing back the amount of excess that you have, instead of sitting in front of the TV at the end of the night. Maybe trying to do some extra reading, maybe leading your family in a rosary. The monastics, they don't have the burdens of TVs and cell phones and all these other things, so it's very easy for them at the end, for their days, all kinds of stable, because there is no problems that we deal with, or as many. They're dealing with their own problems, but we have to figure out in our day-to-day life, what are the things that are excess, that get in the way, that lead us into occasions of sin, whether it's sloth, gluttony, whatever the case may be, and trying to strip those things away, and take the time, the finite amount of time we have, to actually invest it into the correct mindset. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add on the simplicity point, because we've covered it pretty well in depth.
Yeah, I think we've covered it pretty well. But again, but just one little tip that maybe you guys could do, for all you guys out there listening, is do an audit of your day. Account for your time. Like, write down what you did throughout the day. Write down how much time did you spend looking at your phones, doing, scrolling, reading news articles. How could that time have been appropriated towards something, in the more monastic life, prayer, contemplation. If you're not contemplating your final end, the four last things, you need to spend a lot of time doing that. If you haven't done that, I tell you, that's been a very sobering. I'm in my 40s now. I'm creeping in my mid 40s now. I spent a lot of time contemplating on those four last things, and it can be a real gut check at times. So,
Agreed. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
No, I don't have much to add, but again, just want to remind the listeners here, and like what Joy was saying here, you know, take account of what you do in your daily life. Are you more material than spiritual, right? Do you do things? Do you scroll social media? Do you watch YouTube videos? Do you play video games? Do you do things you know of the material world, but you neglect your prayer life? You don't read the Bible. You don't contemplate the lives of the saints. There's a balance here, right? We have to be in the world but not of it, and we have to make sure that we're prioritizing the spiritual above the material, right? So that's really it.
Yeah, and so moving into, I think we're going to jump off of Joey's point of making, when you do an audit of your day and you find like, all right, at night, the kids go to bed and I kind of just slouch in front of the TV, or I watch, or I'm up at 5. Maybe I could get up at 4:30. I mean, folks, I'm up at 4 a.m. every day. So for me, that goes back to my Catholic radio days. But the ideas of fitting in prayer at that time. I mean, especially for the guys on this council that have kids, I assume that quiet time is a premium. And so sometimes you may have to get up a little bit early just to get that extra 30 or 40 minutes of time to really focus on things like prayer, and making sure you build in things like rest. I know we want to say, hey, don't, Trad brought up a great point that it's got to be a balance. Hey, maybe, you want to play a video game or whatever for like 30 minutes or whatever, just to kind of decompress after a day, or maybe you want to, do whatever, build that in, and make sure you put limits on it. So that way you don't go over. And that's one thing the monastics have. That's one thing the homesteaders have. They don't have time for sitting around. There's no like, oh, as modern people, I don't know what to do right now. Yeah, that doesn't exist in the monastic style. That does not exist in the prepper. If you're not feeding the chickens, you're not taking care of the cows, or you're not fixing a fence, or something's got to get done. So it's very interesting that the idea of a routine is so lost. I think, gentlemen, we really lost the idea of a routine after 2020, when everybody was kind of brought into their homes and kind of told to just sit there. And I think after that, we've kind of lost, a lot of people have lost the routine of their life. And sometimes people will give you, a little bit of nonsense. Oh, you go to the same place, you do the same things every day. Yeah, that's because I want to make sure I get them done. And that's, I get them done most efficiently. Rhythm of prayer and work and rest, it cultivates all of this endurance, because if you're not worried, if you know that things are going to get done, you're not going to get stressed about these things. So I'm going to go Angel, Joey, and then Trad.
I almost interrupted you because, I had
You should have.
something to say, but that's why I mute myself. I tend to, my parents are, I'm Cuban, so Cubans tend to be like Italians. We like talking loud and interrupting each other.
Well, I'm
It's,
Irish and Italian, man, so go after it.
you feel me? No, um, a lot of homesteaders and farmers, they live by seasons, not by holidays.
Yep.
We have been programmed as a society to consumerize our lives into submission of debt. That is unnecessary, gentlemen. You don't need to buy everyone a Halloween present, this present, every time something comes up. I know that it's cool, but if you go back to like we're talking about connecting with God, the labor of work, and again, you can do that. You can live in an apartment in New York City with a balcony, and you can have a 5-gallon bucket with one tomato plant, and pray and do your part. That's where you're at. You may not be able to leave to the land and do all that. You know what? You planted your seed, and the people next are going to see, why do they have that bucket, 5-gallon bucket with a tomato plant? Well, I want to eat my own tomato, even if it's one all summer. Just the spirituality and the purpose behind what you're putting into that is huge. You are the change, right? And if you really think about it, like I said, farmers and homesteaders live by seasons, not holidays. Think about how important that is. You're
And let me just
preparing.
let me
Go
just throw
ahead.
this in there real quick, Angel. Notice what else goes with the seasons is the calendar, is the Catholic calendar. It dovetails perfectly together. Go ahead.
Yeah, we went from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, right? From antiquity into modern times. And that's fine. The Gregorian calendar is fine. Which, puts Christmas where it is, the week of the 25th or whatever. But some might argue differently. Um, but the reality is, if we live by seasons and not holidays, we are more connected to the natural law, which is what God created. Once we start falling away from that and depending on other things and consumerizing our way into slavery, basically, right? Having to crawl our way out of debt, you know, we're falling away slowly. But I think it's a difficult mindset to wrap our minds around. But I think the more that we project this and the more that we share it with each other, we're going to find a happy medium where we can do it where we're at and be free of that.
Yeah, routines are just really important, and I really got a taste of that back last spring. I was on retreat, and Father Nix was there, and we picked him up from the airport, and we drove out east, and we're sitting there having a conversation. He's like, "Oh, sorry guys, you guys just keep talking. I got to do these prayers," and it was like that the entire weekend. He'd be sitting there having the conversation. Next thing you know, it's like, "Where Father Nix go?" "Oh, nope, he's walking up and down the path." Doing his prayers. I mean, he is so set into that routine. And it is, I don't have to put words in his eye. It is absolutely paramount to living the life that he lives. He's a hermit. He's a priest, but he's that routine is so important. And going back, now that I have this, Baltimore Book of Prayers, I'm kind of trying to emulate him. Like he had that set routine and he does not deviate. It doesn't matter how lively the conversation, or if we're in the middle of, tagging a cow, or something, like he is going to go do what he is supposed to be doing in that moment. If it's prayer, he's going to pray. And so I found myself, really reordering the order of my day to try and emulate that in my own way as a layman. It's not going to be as rigorous as his is, because he has a set thing that he has to. He's under obedience. I'm sure he has vows that he has to make those prayers. I could be a little bit more flexible, but again, going back to what we talked about earlier, a lot of time you waste more. Every one of us wastes more time than we realize. And if you will start putting in, if all us guys that are military veterans, they teach, that's the most basic thing you learn in boot camp, is a routine of your life. You wake up, you make your bed, you brush your teeth, you get in formation, you have a set routine that you do of working out and all these things. And if men will start finding a good routine, and it's not going to be easy, you're probably going to fail at it, and doing these prayers myself, there are days, baby's up, he's having his little seizures and stuff, I miss my morning prayers. I get distracted, I miss my morning prayers. Well, I'm going to make sure that I do those evening prayers, because I know, Erica's going to be here and she can care for him, and I'll get those evening prayers done. And we're trying to work. We just bought a second copy. I'm going to buy a copy of this for every one of my kids, as a way to develop a prayer routine for themselves. And, I think, and again, setting, good boundaries for yourself with regards to, there's so many distractions in the world. We're in the middle of football season. I don't watch basketball, but I'm sure there's basketball guys out there too. Video games, I got away from that nonsense. I don't do video games no more. I would much rather spend time contemplating and thinking about life and our final end than playing video games. But again, for you guys to do that, set very strict limits to that, and use that time to contemplate and learn how to. You'll be surprised at the areas that you will find, like the Holy Spirit's going to talk to you when you're contemplating and you're really in that deep, thoughts. God's going to tell you, like, hey, you're really messing up in this area. If you listen, God's going to tell you, like, you're really deficient in this area. You should really work on that area. And we need to open our ears to the Holy Ghost, because he will guide us. We're all, if you're baptized, confirmed Catholic, the Holy Spirit is going to guide you. You just got to give it time.
No, I don't have much to add. I mean, that's pretty spot on there. I mean, if you come from a military background, we have that understanding of structure, deadlines, time hacks. You got to meet these time hacks if you want to get something done. And we're living in a community like this, having a structured, rigid hierarchy, but also timetable and community in which you conduct events, you pray, you work. All of that is going to help you and kind of allow you to have a grounding in your everyday life. So no, great points all around.
Yeah, and that brings us to the final point, which is kind of the nice culmination of all of these things, which is faith as the anchor, as your center. The monastic life, it centers on unwavering faith, often offering a model of spiritual fortitude that sustains hope and purpose even in the darkest of times. It's easy to pray when things are going well, right? Everybody, it's very easy to pray and say thank you, God, when everything's going well. How many people say thank you, God, when things are going bad? One of my favorite books to read is the Book of Job. I especially read it during Lent. is as because it's a great example of no matter what, to be unwavering and even in the darkest of times, because everything that's good comes from God, and everything that you have to struggle with is for a purpose for you to either purge a sin that's dogging you, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of people put I can't say I don't. I haven't in the past pursued money or whatever the case may be. And the problem is, when you attain the earthly good, whatever it is, you still feel empty inside with it. And that's where the monastic life really shows the way that, yes, things are tough, times are hard, but when everything is ordered in the right way and it's ordered towards the good, then you're going to be feeling, no matter what the time is, you may not feel great, but there's an inner sense of peace that comes along with it. And I think that's something that we really need to go after, because a lot of American Catholics, not Catholic Americans, I have a whole spiel on that. Unfortunately, just being in this society that we're in, and I'm not trying to bag the society, but the society tells you to pursue earthly gains and to put those things at the center of your life. And so we tend to fall away from God center. When I say this, guys, I'm the prime example of it, of having to reset myself manually. Like, I gotta make sure I focus back to putting God first and putting all these things in order. And that's something we can take from the monastic life is, hey, there's nothing else here but God. There's nothing else here but our pursuit of a holy death and a blessed eternity. And I think a lot of us would do well to put our primary focus back towards the good, and we'll find that everything else will, as Joey said, when you're in meditation, when you're pursuing that, you'll start to see things fall into place. It won't happen overnight, which is a problem, because a lot of us have the feeling we treat our Lord and Savior like a genie a lot of the time. Like, oh, if I pray a little harder right now, if I do 3 Hail Marys right now, God, right, you're going to help me out with something. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But we got to shake ourselves out of that mindset. So thoughts on faith as an anchor, going trad, Joey, and then Angel.
No, it's simple enough, and it's a principle that you can utilize in any community, really, not just a prepping one. But as Catholics, we have to anchor ourselves to Christ. We have to anchor ourselves to the teachings of the church. And regardless of whatever vocation you have in life, your duty first and foremost is to know, love, and serve God, right? And with a community, like a monastic one, their everyday lives, their every action throughout the day, every hour of the day is oriented and purposefully done to glorify God, right? Um, so we can imitate that in our everyday lives, but especially in the communities that we form, parish communities, social networks, etc., making sure that we orient ourselves to God and make sure that we are putting the spiritual first and foremost at the front of everything we do, all of our accomplishments, all our failures, everything, putting it to God first, and everything else after will fall into place once you do that.
Yeah, and one of the things you have to always remember: God will humble you at some point. God will humble you. If you think you got things figured out, be prepared to be humbled. And we were humbled. Having a Down syndrome baby is something I actually prayed for a few years back. That's a personal story of mine. Our parish has several Down syndrome babies, and I remember looking at 2 of them that were running around, and I was just like, God, if you're ever going to send one of these precious souls to earth and it's going to be aborted, send it to us. We'll take them. We'll take that cross. 3 years later, prayer was answered, and it's really been it's a sobering reminder of you have to your faith is your anchor. I'm going through. He has seizures multiple times a day. We're going through, I think the other night, last night he had an episode, they call them clusters. And over the course of 15 minutes, he was having 3 to 4 mini seizures per minute. And you feel completely helpless as a dad, as a mom for my wife, Erica. You feel completely helpless because there's nothing you can do about it right now. Hopefully we're going to be getting some treatment soon. We got a treatment plan that we're working on. But you do feel completely helpless during these times. And that's what we have. We have our faith. Our faith is going to be our ground, and and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing the story, but again, I was on retreat over the weekend at Taylor's cattle ranch, and we made me, his son, and a couple of my buddies were driving around. We were just actually setting up a pop-up blind for pig hunting, and his son spotted a dead calf, and it was laying in the creek, and we saw it. We got Taylor, and when he went up to go take a look, we were just like, man, we're so sorry. He looked right up at us and said, "The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away." And I was just like, wow, and going through the struggles we have with our special needs baby, it's like I have to realize that maybe we won't have him forever. Maybe we will. I pray that he has a long life. But at the end of the day, I know I'm going to lean on my faith. I'm going to lean on my brothers. I'm going to lean on these great men that I have in my life. So fortunate to have, my parents they just couldn't have more kids. It's just me and my sister, and but these guys are like the older brothers that I never had, that I always wanted. And Will, he's like my little, he's the youngest guy in the group. I'm the second youngest. I really give him the business all the time. He's the little brother I always wanted, and so I make sure I give him the good business. But these guys really, I mean, they are a bright spot in my life, and it gives me, they give me great advice. And like I said, they're all much more solid in their faith than I am. And I mean, they have really been a guiding light that, just God's going to see you through this. God's going to see you through this, whatever the outcome is. God's going to see you through this. And that's how I approach every single day now. Every single day that I have with my son is an absolute gift. It's an absolute treasure. And I'm honored to be able to sit there and hold him when he's going through these things. Because, after they stop, there's times that we just kind of lock eyes. We just lock eyes and he's just staring at me. And it's like, wow. It's like you almost see like the face of God in this child staring at you saying, hey, you're taking care of me, Dad. You're doing your best, and it's hard. It's hard, but at the end of the day, I have my faith, and I'm going to do the best that I can with all the tools that God has given me, and that's the faith. I mean, medical science is only going to do so much for us, but at the end of the day, we have eternity to look forward to, and so that's really all I got to say on that, without getting emotional.
Yeah, Joey, after your story and what everyone else has said, I don't have much to say. You guys have, like Rick says, when Rick goes last, he says, you guys told the show, right? I mean, what am I going to add to this? There's nothing I can add to this, but I can tell you that, this crucifix, it's an old crucifix, probably from the 50s or 60s. You can remove it and place it, and it has two old candles inside to put two candles. So it's an old crucifix there. Someone brought us from a thrift shop. It's a thrift shop find, and I guess someone used to say mass with it or something, because there was a little note in there, and fascinating stuff. But I not to get emotional like you said, but I look at that crucifix every morning, and I do pray for everyone that has a cross, you know, that has we have our own struggles that I'd rather not share in the World Wide Web. But we have our own struggles in the family, a lot of conflict. I will share this: a lot of conflict because we are Catholic, coming from non-Catholic family members, to the point where we're beaten to submission as heathens. So we have our cross, and that's just scratching the surface. And Joy, just you've been given a precious gift, and you may be seeing life and God through the eyes of something that no one else may be able to see. And I'm just thankful to have you all around and to be able to connect and talk about this.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it is when you are going to realize when you start doing the things that you thought were a burden or any of these are actually gifts, in a way that you get and I am not trying to sound pious, because believe me, there are days when I look at my crosses and I'm like, good golly, great Googa Mooga. But the fact is they are blessings if we can have the right mindset to say, okay, well, this is what you are putting in front of me, and I can use this for me. Whenever I run into crosses or issues, I try to offer them up for the suffering souls in purgatory, opportunities like that. And Um, it's as Travis said multiple times, this is, not our home, and these burdens are to remind us of that. And it is a great way to reestablish our faith as an anchor when we look at the things that we may say, oh, life's so tough here because of this and because of that. Oh, well, you know what? All right, what is God using this specific thing to try and purge something else from my life? I'm not going to get into it, but I was confessing one time a sin, and the priest said, "Listen, this sin is being put in front of you in an attempt to purify you of it." That's what God's on your side. Our Lord and Savior's on your side. It's being used for that purpose. You got to understand that, and once you have your faith as your anchor, you can start to see these things and navigate these things a lot better with a better mindset. So it's a great way. That's actually a great way to close out the whole monastic lifestyle talk here on the Council of St. Michael. And now we're going to get to some people's part of the show, which is our daily deals. So I know we just had such a wrenching conversation. Like, all right, guys, let's talk about the bullets.
This
It's
is
one of my
Joey,
favorite
this is
segments of the
Joey's
show,
favorite.
man.
This is Joey's favorite part of the show. I always kind of chuckle sarcastically. The weekly deals, I love them. I look forward to them every week, Joey. I promise.
No
Well, I
way for me to
appreciate
get
it.
this week too, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go first up is going to be the we'll call them the pre ban Glocks now. Gen 5 15+1. This is the Glock 20. This is a 10 millimeter.
Love
If
it.
you're going to be out in the
Love it.
field and you're in an area where there's, angels in Florida, you got those crazy gators out there. You got pythons. I don't know how very often I'm going to be going back to Florida. You guys got some wild creatures living out there. But again, if you're in an area, you're out in, here in Texas, we got mountain lions coming through my subdivision not long ago. We had a mountain lion. You need something with some oomph to it. I shot a 10 millimeter, and I've actually shot specifically the Glock 10 millimeter. I really enjoyed it. It's a great shooting gun. It's not overpowering, but it definitely gives the oomph. And they got a good deal right now, $649. It's the old school Glock, so you don't have to worry about any hiccups that may or may not be happening with the new Glock V's that are out. So it's a great price, $649 pre-ban Glock. So definitely want to look into that.
I think that 10 mil, that is probably the best platform for the 10 millimeter out there. I know a lot of people.
I think so.
11,
I would agree with that.
I'd have to say that's the best one.
Yeah, and that's through Palmetto State. It seems like 90% of the things we do are through Palmetto State Armory. And then the second one is going to be a Ballistic Advantage. It's going to be the barrel. This is the 223 Wild barrel. That's also great too. Yeah, so they have the 223 Wild barrel. That again, Ballistic Advantage. This is a great deal. This barrel is typically $200, and they got it down to $75 right now. So if you're looking for a great barrel, they have a guarantee on their MOA on their accuracy. So you put it on there, and it's not shooting the way that it's supposed to. You can send it back and get another one. But that's a fantastic deal. Definitely take advantage of that deal.
I actually have the 223 barrel, so I find it to be a great shooting round. So I do enjoy that.
This is a 17. This is almost an 18-inch barrel, so you're going to get better ballistic performance out of it because you have a longer barrel. And then the last one is going to be just Ballistic Advantage. They're running great. They're running like early Black Friday deals, so you can get 30, 40, 50% off on their products there. I have a little bit of knowledge about, some of the food stuff out there. I think I'm going to start turning that stuff over to Angel to find those deals of the day on that kind of stuff. But I think he knows a little bit more about that stuff than I do. I kind of stick with more of the firearm deal. But again, that's a great thing. We're coming into that part of the season right now where if you're looking to start something, you want to start an armory, now's the time to do it. There's going to be a lot of great deals coming out here over the next 2 months. So if you're looking at starting something, you want to get, I know Patriot Food Supply every year during this time of year, they have some great discounts that you can take advantage of. Get those water filtration systems, just anything, buy something and start somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, excellent, guys. If you have questions about any of the daily deals, you can reach out to Joey or myself or Trad or Angel, and we can get you finding those as well. Gentlemen, I am going to adjourn the Council of St. Michael tonight. Thank you guys for being a part of this. As always, if you like what we did today, ladies and gentlemen, do me a huge favor. Why don't you hit that like button? That helps the show out tremendously. As far as getting more people to kind of take a look at the show and so forth. So make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, share the show with everybody that you know as well. And we will talk to you guys next week here on the Council of St. Michael. God bless and Viva Cristo Rey.
Viva Cristo Rey.
Nope, wrong button. Wrong button again. I hit the wrong button.
Subscribe. I like that.
That's right.